Today, Cape Town's District 6 is mostly wasteland. But it used to be home to a vibrant community, which was brutally displaced by South Africa's apartheid regime. The people of District 6 spoke a distinctive language, a mix of Afrikaans, English, and other words whose origins are obscure.
There is a particular kind of way of speaking, this terminology, for example, that people use that they would say, only people in District 6 know about this way of speaking. And I can give you some examples, but maybe they're words that won't mean anything because I don't even know where they come from. I mean, a common expression that I hear is people would say, if work is done very shoddily and it's not done to perfection, they'll say it's very lapis kasaram. Now, no one else has ever heard of this word, but it's District 6 people, they understand that.
The residents were mainly mixed race, but in the 1960s, the area was designated as whites only, and thousands of people were forcibly removed and their homes destroyed.
You see all the empty land. Now people lived here before. There were houses there, wherever you see empty land. Even over there, right down, from there, right down, all empty still. We're looking at, 70,000 people's lives were destroyed, you know, and again, just because of the color of their skin.
A few of the original streets have survived, but many have been replaced with new buildings.
My house was right here, this spot, right here. Big double-story home, 4-bedroom home. On the corner of this was called Caledon Street, and there was a street going down called Horsburg Lane. Many people died of broken hearts. I remember my father he was about in his early 60s when he had to leave his home. And I remember how my father cried because he didn't want to go, because this was his home.
Although much of District 6 was destroyed, its distinct language has survived.
We didn't speak English. We didn't speak Afrikaans. Our language was called Kitchen English, or the Afrikaans word that is Kombuis Engels. What we do is we mix our languages, you know. Like, let me give you an example. Now, in English, someone will say maybe, where are you going to, or where are you going to? Now, proper Afrikaans, like the Afrikaners used to speak, they will say, waar, W-A-A-R, gaan, G-A-A-N, waar gaan jy? That's a proper Afrikaans. Now listen carefully what we said. We said, waar gaat jy? Can you hear the difference? We didn't say waar, we just said W-A, waar, gaat, G-A-T, J. We didn't even say jy. And that was some of our language in District 6. We still speak it today, and I'm very proud of my language.
The vernacular that developed in District 6 was a blend of two things. One was what you would call code switching, where somebody would say 2 or 3 sentences in one language and then 2 or 3 in another, or a clause in one and a clause in another, but where the grammars would be intact. But in addition to that, you had a mixed vernacular where the grammatical base is largely Afrikaans, but an enormous amount of the vocabulary is English.
Some of the original District 6 residents still live here. When they speak, you can hear a mix of English, Afrikaans and the local vernacular.
Dan zit het als een joke voor hem. Toen nodig aan wat ik heb iets verkeerd gedaan, man. Toen zei ik, kom, ik klap je zo, man. Ah, die zo, man. Toen bleek ik achter eten. Toen dacht ik, oh, het is nog niet recht. Sometime moet ik jou naar de dochter van.
There's words you don't find in a dictionary that we use. You see? That's a non-existent word, but we understand what that means.
Listen to me. Let me tell you something. Hij praat al zijn kak samen met. En nou, even maar op man, ja. Waar gaat ze nu? Ik wil niet weg van mijn pani. Als ik ga trouwen, ik wil niet weg van mijn pani.
Because we were slaves, you see. So we came from the east, whatever, and then afterwards we adapted that to the South African language, you know, which was Afrikaans at that time. So the Afrikaans mixed with the English and the Eastern languages. See, and then we just mix it like all the time.
The former chapel in District 6 has now been converted into a museum, so that the history of the area and its language can be documented.
These are all the streets. Now my house, let me show you. So there's corner of Caledon Street and Horsburgh Lane. There's St. Mark Church. That was the Star Bioscope there. And that was the fish market, right opposite.
Under apartheid, Afrikaans was imposed as the official language of South Africa, and there was a strong purist ideology to keep languages separate.
During the apartheid era, when there was a strong concern for racial purity, that went along with a strong concern for what people called linguistic purity. And it's very, very common. It's not particular to South Africa, that where there are heavily weighted ethnic divisions, that very often that the weighting carries over into the language. And if people want to keep separate, they will not want their languages influenced by the other. And they sometimes use words like contamination. We don't want it contaminated with that other language and so on.
I used to travel a lot, every year we used to go to South End, Port Elizabeth. Now also there in other areas, people speak proper Afrikaans like the people speak here, Then I remember when we go there every year, when we speak, they used to laugh at us, And when they speak, we used to laugh at them. So it was really fun, But of course, after that, it didn't bother them because then they realized, no, that is our language. Why must you laugh at somebody else's language, So I'm very proud, very proud. We still speak it. My brothers, my sisters, well, of course, my children speak English, But we, as a family and cousins and friends, we still speak the same language.
During apartheid, language and politics were closely entwined. Afrikaans was spoken at school, but for many families who lived in District 6, like this one, it was seen as the language of the apartheid regime, and English was viewed more positively.
We normally speak English, but when we grew up, my mother spoke Afrikaans, my father spoke English. And that's how we were quite fluent in both languages, and at school too.
My father would not allow us to speak Afrikaans in the home because of his... Because of the policies of the government. He suffered so much. He was a soldier, he fought for this country, and even though he went through all that, he was treated like a second-class citizen, and so he totally rejected the culture of Afrikaner nationalist government. And so we were forbidden to speak Afrikaans in our house, so we spoke to my mother when he wasn't there. And then she would, and he would always tell her, don't speak Afrikaans. But when you lived in District 6, you had to speak Afrikaans. And for me, it was all about mixing my languages. The interesting thing about District 6 was you spoke a certain way in your home. In the streets, you would speak Afrikaans. And then you would mix your English and Afrikaans. And you would speak a different Afrikaans to what you spoke in school. In school, you were taught the proper Afrikaanse taal, And then your friends on the street, you spoke just like them. If you didn't speak like them, you would be ostracized, you would sometimes be bullied.
The vernacular which is spoken by the District 6 residents is viewed much more positively now than it was under apartheid.
People are now quite confident about speaking this vernacular outside the community, and also sometimes recognizing that it has enormous value. So, for example, two people that I interviewed again when they were in their early 20s, one had become a doctor and one was just finishing her degree in nursing. I had interviewed them when they were 3, 4, 5 years old and tape recorded them when they were at preschool, and I knew that they were fluent in both languages and could speak the vernacular. And I asked them, as adults now and in your professional lives, which languages do you use most and so on, and do you use the vernacular, because they were not working, there aren't any hospitals left in District 6, there was one. So they're not working in District 6 anymore, but the vernacular is quite, or a form of it is widely spoken, and they said it's absolutely crucial in our work because people are frightened when they're ill, come to see the doctor. They know if they're working class, and they quite often know, I can't speak proper English, but I don't know the Afrikaans words for my ailments, so I can't really speak Afrikaans because then I'll mix it. And they just say it's a huge relief if the doctor can actually speak to them in their own vernacular. And of course, because you can't learn a vernacular like that, nobody teaches it to you, you can only pick it up by association. The second message that the patients were getting is, we grew up in circumstances like yours, so it was a great bonding thing, and they both said it's crucial.
There is actually, strangely enough, a lot of the old dialect that still exists, that people still use as a kind of, I suppose, informal dialect. And I see, and some of it is class-based, because I hear lots of people talking the dialect in the townships. So sometimes it's also a dialect of the working classes, I think, and people that have hung on to that, were very comfortable in talking that register. So I don't see it really dying out in that sense. The current District 6 community has a number of new languages that have come in through people coming from other parts of Africa, like in the rest of South Africa, the rest of Cape Town, people coming from Congo, people coming from Rwanda, a lot of Zimbabweans, so we've got Shona, we've got French, a bit of Portuguese as well. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see the kind of language mix that emerges from that.